What's up, family, and welcome back to the channel. This is actually my second time recording this video. The first one was so much better. I hate that you missed out on it, but the audio sucked. So here I am, having to take a lunch break at work to record this video or to re-record it. I called myself being very well organized. I get up early in the mornings and I record my videos so that way I don't have to interfere with my day job, right? Well, today I'm having to take my lunch to do this, but I am excited about this conversation, even though it's the second time I'm having it. But you didn't know that. Well, now you do, and I'm just venting. All right, so before we jump into this, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the alert notification bell, and consider joining, supporting, or connecting with this channel, community, or content in any way that makes sense for you. And then, of course, last but not least, check out the merch because, it's dope, if I could say so myself. So you've already noticed by the thumbnail and the title, today we're going to be talking about why people believe weird things. And this is based on a book of the same title, Why People Believe Weird Things, Pseudoscience, Superstition, and Other Confusions of Our Time. This is a book by Michael Shermer, and it's a critical exploration of why humans are drawn to irrational beliefs, pseudoscience, and superstitions. Shermer, a science historian and founder of Skeptic magazine, delves into the psychological, emotional, and social factors that make people susceptible to unscientific or illogical ideas. And I like books like this because, hey, my background is sociology, and I do kind of appreciate a sociological approach to understanding how we come to many of the beliefs that we come to, especially those that we'd classify as religious beliefs, right? All right, so I want to platform this conversation by pulling a few of the key themes that Michael had in this book and just kind of talk through them. So one of the main key themes, which this one, as far as why people believe weird things, is cognitive biases and patterns. Shermer explains how cognitive biases, such as the human tendency to see patterns and causal links where none exist, drive belief in things like conspiracy theories, superstitions, and pseudosciences. One key bias he discusses is patternicity. That's the human brain's tendency to see patterns or connections where none actually exist. This bias, rooted in evolutionary survival mechanisms, helped early humans avoid danger, but now leads people to believe in things like conspiracy theories or superstitions. Now, this is one obviously that I've highlighted before in several of my videos, is that we have often seen these causal links, in places as a part of our sociological evolution, which means in the early days of our species, we had to be able to come to conclusions quickly, even if they were the wrong conclusions, because we didn't have the benefit of time, which is one of those reasons why I do enjoy the conversation from a more sociological perspective, because sociological evolution is what is giving us the gift of time, where we now have time to think about things thoroughly. The early days of our existence would have been very much, we would have been very much in survival mode. And not only, it's not even just about being in survival mode, it's the reasons why we're in survival mode. We'd likely be in survival mode because we'd be in an unsurvivable terrain. And that unsurvivable terrain is not just because there's not a way to make it survivable. It would be because we haven't yet learned enough about it to know how to navigate it. So then you do have to simplify things in those early days as bad juju, good juju, to be able to survive. I often remind people that as a species, there used to just be two jobs for us: hunters or gatherers. But as we have continued to evolve sociologically, what it means to be human has changed along with it. And so now we have several different titles. It's no longer just hunter, gatherer, it's mother, it's father, sister, brother, singer, actor, comedian, social media influencer, engineer, architect, and it just keeps on expanding and will likely continue to do so, because that's just the beauty of things. Those are the gifts that we've given ourselves as a species, and that is a beautiful way to think about that in one hand. But yeah, so no, so it does kind of help give us a little bit of insight to know that there were periods of times where some of these superstitious beliefs that we have would have actually been rational to hold from a survival standpoint. Even now, in certain nations where it's illegal to not believe, there will be people who would hold on to those beliefs, even while not actually holding on to them, for a very rational reason. And that rational reason for them would be survival, which really speaks to the work that we really need to do in the world, right? Um, Nobody needs to be forced to believe full bullshit to survive. That's horrible, right? Um, but so, for instance, we might link unrelated events like wearing a lucky shirt and winning a game and falsely attribute them to a cause and effect relationship, which, of course, Christians are. We were really good at that, right? You prayed for something to happen, something happened, you ignored everything in between the time of that happened and just said, nope, this equals this. That's a falsely attributing cause effect, where it actually doesn't exist. And this tendency also fuels belief in pseudoscience, such as astrology, where perceived patterns in star positions are thought to influence human affairs. But then even you could be a minister, a Christian minister in good faith, and you could fall into this type of issue, to this type of trap, because you will start not knowing that your brain kind of seeks those patterns out. You will start thinking that this is some type of spiritual gift you have, and you will always try to act on it, which is something that I actually did. For a while, I thought I had this prophetic gift because I could see all these patterns, and many times I could just guess and be right. And so I thought, oh, that's evidence that God is speaking to me. Isn't that weird? Um, but yeah, astrology is another big one. Because again, it's always the thing that the person is saying is real, is something that they will also admit that they don't have the tools to investigate. And that's pretty much how a lot of pseudoscience gets supported, or gets promoted rather. It's because it exists in this mysterious realm. And for me, the moment exists in the mysterious realm, that means you have no way of getting to it. So I'm immediately out of the game. So when someone, conspiracy theorists always do this. They'll do something like, hey, this person did this, but nobody knows because the FBI burned all the documents. And I'd be like, what? So how do you know then? Yeah, no, if all the documents were burned and they did this to keep everybody from knowing, how the fuck did you find out? And then typically it's on this public website that everybody else has access to. And it's just like, yeah, okay. All right, buddy. All right, so Shermer also delves into agenticity, where we assume intentionality or agency behind events, even if no conscious agent is involved. This helps explain why people believe in paranormal activities or conspiracy theories. Our brain looks for agency behind the unexplained. And that's true. And when we say the unexplained, we need to understand that that's a moving goalpost. Saying something unexplained doesn't mean something is inexplicable, right? And I think it's just dealing with our own incredulity, right? This is a hard thing for humans to deal with. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean somebody else doesn't. Just because you can't explain it doesn't mean it can't be explained. And the reason I'm harping on this way is because this is typically what you hear a lot of. People say, I had this unexplainable experience, but then they proceed to explain it. Anyway, but no, they say, I have this experience, right, that can't be explained. Nobody can tell me how this has happened. But then if you ask them, have you ever actually went to anybody who would be qualified to help interrogate this with you and tell you how this happened? Their answer is like, nah, I just know that nobody would be able to tell me that this happened. So this is an argument from incredulity and an argument from ignorance. All right. So because I don't know, it's not possible for anybody else to know. And you hear this a lot, especially among believers, and particularly among believers who have absolutely no theological grounding. And so their attachment to the beliefs that they have, which tend to be random and tattered, are just emotional attachments to these experiences that they attach themselves to, and they don't want anybody to make them feel like a liar. And it's like, well, here's the thing. If you had an experiment and you didn't investigate it, but then you went out and pretended like you did investigate it and tried to force that on everybody else to like, no, this really did happen, then yes, you are a liar, because nobody is under obligation to believe that something happened to you. And if it really did happen to you, you wouldn't need anybody else to believe that it happened to you. You know, and if it was something that you were serious about, and this is why, like, I don't argue with a lot of believers, because it's just 100% disingenuous to me. If you honestly felt that you were having this spiritual experience, why wouldn't you want to interrogate it to make sure that you're having a spiritual experience, especially when your theology believes that not only could God be giving you this experience, but it could be the devil giving you this experience. So why would you then not do your due diligence to make sure that the experience that you're having is absolutely an experience from God? Well, I'll go ahead and tell you the reason you won't do that. The reason you won't do that is because no matter how passionately you speak, you know the shit is bullshit. And I was in it long enough to where I'm more than willing to call you out on it. You know, next time someone's really all hyped up on you about how much they believe in God and God speaks to them all the time, just out of the blue, ask them, hey, when you get to heaven, what's the first question you're going to ask God? What's the question you always wanted to ask God? If they rattle off an answer to you, they've already exposed to you that they don't believe that this God speaks to them on earth. It's really that simple. It's really that simple. All right, so let's continue, because I'll take my little rabbit trails and go on. I think I'm kind of mad because I'm doing this twice, because I'm having to do this the second time. And you're going to hear my office computer like popping off, you know. But these cognitive biases, while helpful for survival in ancient environments, can mislead us in modern context, driving belief in pseudosciences, superstition, and other irrational ideas. Shermer emphasizes the importance of recognizing these biases to engage in more critical scientific thinking. And that's so true, because like, think about when you were a kid and you go, you know, you look out the window and you thought you saw a scary face or something like that. Well, what most people do with a lot of these believing in weird things is they looked at the window the one time and then turned away and never looked back again to verify. So it's just whatever I saw that one time, that's reality. And like literally 8 to 9 out of 10 conversations I've had with people who have had, you know, paranormal experiences. And that's why I was harping on earlier, the disingenuousness of not actually interrogating that experience actually demonstrates that you don't really believe that you had an experience. You just want other people to believe that you had an experience so you can feel special about yourself. Because what you actually believe is you believe that other people really did have that experience. You're not sure if you had that experience, but you want to be able to be a part of that inclusive group or exclusive group, you know. But yeah, so it's like looking at the window the first time. Yes, it looks like a scary man because your brain doesn't have enough of the imagery. It doesn't have enough of the details to actually see what's going on. But the longer you look at it, the clearer the image it becomes, you know, the more you interrogate it. And that's why I love one of the things that Neil deGrasse Tyson does when people claim to have near-death experiences. You know, well, instead of telling me what you saw in heaven, you know what I'm saying? Which no one could verify. Tell us what you saw while you were leaving. You know? Let's talk about things that could actually be verified. Which, in other words, it's all about the questions. He's also had this when people claim to see ghosts. And his question to them is like, okay, well, what questions did you ask him? What, and it's always like something fluffy, you know, which is like, okay, yeah, this is likely bullshit, you know. Well, the fact that the person said they saw a ghost is typically the bullshit part. And I'm not saying people don't see things, but I'm saying just because you see something and you can't explain it doesn't mean you can jump all the way and say, I know for a fact it was a ghost. Like that's the problem with superstition. All right. Um The next one he hits another key theme is psychological comfort, where he says many people find psychological and emotional comfort in weird beliefs. For example, belief in an afterlife provides emotional solace in the face of mortality. And yes, while I will agree that many people do find psychological and emotional comfort in weird beliefs, I don't think belief in the afterlife, just based off of experience and observation, I know that's what the propaganda says, but I've never seen this in practice. I don't see anybody who's comfortable with death because they believe in an afterlife. As a matter of fact, we actually tend to see the opposite. We see the people who don't believe in an afterlife who seem to have the most comfort with death. you know so and I only highlight that because this is it's something that's popular. It gets People have these beliefs because these beliefs make them feel better. Well, if these beliefs make them feel better, then why don't they feel better? So like, just because they're lying to themselves don't mean we have to participate in on the lie. No, if these beliefs in an afterlife were actually giving them comfort, there would be a lot less crying at the funerals. You see what I'm saying? There's crying at the funerals. I'm gonna continue, but we're gonna come back. But these beliefs can offer emotional solace in the face of life's uncertainty, such as the fear of death or existential dread. For example, belief in an afterlife or reincarnation helps mitigate the anxiety associated with the mortality by providing the assurance of continued existence. I would argue that it doesn't. If it did, there would be less anxious Christians. Christians would have there would be a statistical norm among Christians where their anxiety levels among existential threats would be measurably less than it is for people who do not hold that belief. That's just not the case, and that's why I say, like, there's too much stuff that we associate with and that we carry on as true, which is not really true. And just to kind of add to this point, there is so much false Christian ideology that has permeated psychology. Like, this is real. Many psychology departments and universities need to be absolutely purged. And I mean, like, let's make sure that this is scientific. I ain't talking about killing nobody. But no, it needs to be purged over a lot of pseudo Christian beliefs that have now made it into psychology beliefs. Like, I remember the five love languages. That, please do not try to build your relationships off the five love languages, okay? Because there really is only one love language, and that's the language that both of y'all speak. All right. And people say, oh, no, no, that's not right. No, it is. As adults, you got to learn how to communicate. You got to learn how to talk. Nobody's going to therapy because you didn't give me enough gifts. The number one issue in marriage counseling is a lack of communication. And so, do you know what the marriage counselor is going to spend that whole time helping you to learn how to do? Talk to each other. We got to stop getting sold on bullshit, you know? And actually, I think one of the best ways to do that is to become a salesman. Become a salesman, because, like, one of the main rules of the game as a salesperson is sold or be sold. And so the thing that you end up beginning to learn and catch is you begin to recognize easily when someone's selling you. Like, no, you're selling me right now. You're not trying to help me. You're not trying to give me. You're not giving me information from expertise. Your relationship with this shit is shallow as shallow can be. You're just selling me right now. You know. And I'm not mad at you. I'll be mad at myself for buying. You know. All right. So yeah. So I'm not buying the sale that these beliefs mitigate anxiety in any type of way. And again, that is the propaganda. And I think we need to be careful about supporting that propaganda, because that's going to strengthen the preacher's arguments that you can get something from church that the world can't give you. Do you see what I mean? Do you see you see what we're doing there? And so then that's going to strengthen those irresponsible and reckless preachers to say, see, even the atheist is telling you that having this belief is giving you peace and is reducing your anxiety. No, no, we should not be telling people that. But I get it. And I said this, and when I recorded this the first time, is that I'm not attacking Michael at all. I know why those who were called the new atheists felt this type of way, because many of them, their background with Christianity wasn't as, like, religious. There's communal Christians, there's cultural Christians, there's all types of Christians, right? But so people who have been primarily non-religious the majority of their life, they still desire to deal in good faith with religious arguments. And so what they're doing is they're saying, well, if this is what religious people are saying, I'm going to treat it as good faith truth. Now, because my existence has been primarily religious, I can say I don't give a fuck how many of them are saying it. It's not true until it's true. And there's no evidence that these beliefs are actually mitigating anxiety. You know, that's all I'm saying. Now, Michael wouldn't have known that. So again, this is I'm not talking negative about Michael. I'm sort of a fan. If I could be a thing, I'm not really a fan of anybody, but I like what he says on some things, right? But yeah, but he says similarly, conspiracy theories or superstitions often provide a sense of control or understanding in an unpredictable world. These beliefs offer cognitive comfort when reality feels overwhelming. Which again, I'd say that they don't, because I've had to counsel these people. And if it provided comfort, like, they wouldn't have to keep coming back, and it's just like, most people's experience, and I can't say most, but a lot of people's experience with Christian counseling is basically, you're telling me how I should feel, and then I'm going to try to feel that way, and then I'm either going to come back to you because I can't make myself feel that way, but I'll keep letting you kind of give me the brainwashing, so I'll know that I'm at least trying, or I'll realize that it doesn't work and just feel like something is horribly wrong with me. And this is what happens with a lot of people. So this is why I do like to call this out, that I don't think that's a line we have to carry anymore. If they're saying that these beliefs make them feel better and reduce their anxiety, then that is a statement of efficacy, and that should have to be justified. You know. But Shermer suggests that this reliance on comforting yet unfounded belief stems from an inherent desire for meaning and control. For individuals, such beliefs fill the emotional gaps left by the often harsh realities of life. This is particularly evident in scenarios where people are faced with randomness, tragedy, or uncertainty. By clinging to a belief system that offers explanations, whether through religious, pseudoscientific, or supernatural means, individuals feel more grounded and less anxious. However, Shermer points out the danger of these comforting beliefs when they prevent people from confronting reality, leading to potential harm or perpetuation of ignorance. And this one I do kind of disagree with, right? But not again, it's kind of like the previous disagreement. It's not a real disagreement. It's a clarification. So for me, saying that these beliefs often stem from an inherent desire for meaning and control, meaning, yes. Control, I don't think so. I don't, and I know this is probably going to be an unpopular take, but I have talked about the dualism of Christianity, where there is this suffering savior and this conquering king, conquering queen, and the people who attach to those different dualities have very different approaches to their Christianity. And so I'll speak on the side of the suffering savior, that for them these beliefs are not about gaining control. It's not a desire to exercise control. It's a desire to abandon control. It's a desire to abdicate control. It's a desire to believe that nothing is under my control. You can look at that because it tends to be the people who interpreted Christ, as far as Christians, as a suffering savior, that when they leave Christianity, they tie into other conspiracy theories. And the thing that those conspiracy theories have in common with the religious belief that they had in their interpretation of it is that it puts control in somebody else's hand, so that then my life is not the product of my own decisions. Do you see how sneaky that is? So I know we say, no, people have these beliefs because they want a sense of control. And while, yes, that may be true for some, but the vast majority I've seen, they want these beliefs so they don't have to control. So they don't have to actually be responsible for what's happening in the world. So whether it's all in God's hands, or everything has been taken over by alien men or green lizard people, either way, it gives that person an excuse not to engage the world realistically. See, sometimes it's okay to call a spade a spade. And I think we've been so graceful with having these conversations with believers to where we're saying, yes, I know this gives you comfort and I know this makes you feel better. And like that's that's not what it was doing. It wasn't making me feel better. I was tortured the whole time I was in Christianity. These beliefs are torturous. They don't make anybody feel better. Like if you actually described heaven to somebody, do you think they'd really want to go there and spend the rest, like spend a whole eternity singing one song? Get out of here, man. Nobody wants that. This isn't making any. Maybe Muslim heaven sounds great for some people, but there's nothing good about Christian heaven. There's nothing good there. You are worshiping a narcissist all day, every day. It says there's no hunger, there's no tears, because there's no fucking eating anymore. You're just singing all day. I will pass. Sorry, so for me, when from what I've seen from my experience, people attach some people attach to these beliefs because it gives them permission to relinquish control. It gives them permission not to interrogate their lives and learn how to navigate reality. And I don't think that needs to be overlooked. And I think it needs to really be a conversation, because that may be one of the most helpful conversations you can have with people, you know, is being able to say, hey, what if you're using this belief as an excuse not to actually live your life? What if you're using this conspiracy theory as an excuse as to why your life is not where you want it to be? Because the lizard people are controlling everything, or because the Democrats are controlling everything, or because the Republicans are controlling everything. You know, as long as you're willing to be controlled by somebody, you're always going to be controlled by something, imaginary or otherwise. That's just the reality. Sorry. All right. So for individuals, such beliefs fill the emotional gaps left. I think I said that part. Yep, I read all of that. So we can move. But the thing that I don't disagree with him about, and as you can see, that disagreement is very minor. But the thing that I don't disagree with him about is he points out the danger of these beliefs when they prevent people from confronting reality. And we have to realize that that's what many of these beliefs are. These beliefs are a replacement for reality, which in that sense, that means they're always dangerous. As I often remind people, beliefs are not personal. These types of beliefs are not personal, they're social, because they don't typically stop at what you believe about yourself. They extend to what you believe about other people. That makes them social. And so that means any belief that is going to give you permission to ignore the reality you live in is going to increase the probability that you're going to cause harm to somebody, because you've already made the willing commitment to ignore their reality based on your preference of belief, right? I mean, like even in 2024, we have people who still think it's okay to mistreat people of the pride community because of their belief. You know. Um, all right, and so another key point is social reinforcement, which this is a big one, and this is one that I don't think gets talked about enough. And I'm probably going to highlight some things here. But communities and social groups can reinforce pseudoscientific beliefs. What I want to add to that, though, because this is the thing that I think the secular community is not leaning into in the way that it should. Communities and social groups can reinforce not only pseudoscientific beliefs, but also the appearance of pseudoscientific beliefs. And what I mean when I say that is that, yes, social politics are powerful. The need for social cohesion is powerful. It is so powerful that there will be people who are among these pseudo-scientific, pseudo-intellectual groups who don't buy into any of the bullshit. They just need to be a part of a group. Secular community, that's an easy win for us, you know. But Shermer explores how group dynamics and the need for social belonging can perpetuate uncritical acceptance of supernatural or fringe ideas. People often align their beliefs with those of their social group because of the deep human need for belonging and social cohesion. This is particularly evident in religious, pseudoscientific, or fringe communities where shared beliefs create a sense of identity and solidarity. Group dynamics make it difficult for individuals to question or critically examine the group's ideas, leading to uncritical acceptance of even the most improbable claims. And so, what I would like to highlight there is a few things. Number one, we always say this deep human need for belonging. I like to be careful with terminology like that because it otherizes any human being who is a human being that doesn't identify with that need. And while your incredulity may make you think that no human being would ever not have that need, and if they had, it's because they were fucked up as a child. That is a horrible way of viewing the world, and we need to understand that there is no typical or prototype of a prototypical humanity. um, all humans are human. So any need that any human has is a human need. And you know what I'm saying? And if a human doesn't have that need, that doesn't make them less human. And I know that's not what Michael is saying here, but I like to highlight that because it's a part of the community conversations that we have. But so and I hit this because there are plenty of people who don't feel that need for belonging, right? And sometimes they get ostracized heavily. But what I want to highlight here for the need is actually the social cohesion. And it's not even the social cohesion. Let's go deeper than that. The need is safety. Because as a social species, anybody who doesn't fit within the group is going to get treated as they're outside of the group. And I'm explaining that to show how there are people who naturally don't have the need for belonging, but the society that they live in will force them to feel like something is wrong with them if they're not a part of the in group, or will withhold social benefits from them if they're not a part of the group. So we need to dive a little deeper there and understand that that's not a need for belonging. It's a need for safety, because I live in a society, as a species, that has made it like the only way you can be safe is to be one of us, right? So, and this is, particularly evident in religious and pseudoscientific communities. Um, and then the other thing was group dynamics make it difficult for individuals to question or critically examine the group's ideas. And just to kind of hit that difficulty, once we know that that difficulty is present, then you also know that there are people within that group who do not agree with everything the group does, but will not say so because it's difficult. And they know that it's going to lead to conflict, tension, friction, or what may have you. And that again, I'm just trying to highlight how many people may be among the, not even maybe, I tend to know this for a fact, but how many people are in these communities are only there because they have no other places to go for their social safety. Um, Shermer discusses phenomena like confirmation bias within groups, where people selectively reinforce ideas that align with the group's worldview while dismissing opposing evidence. He provides examples from religious cults, conspiracy theory circles, and even scientific communities where peer pressure and the desire for belonging suppress critical inquiry. And so, again, understanding that impact that peer pressure has on critical inquiry, think about how many children only believed in Santa Claus because of the peer pressure from their parents and other children. But then also think about how many people only believe in Jesus because of the peer pressure from their parents and the peer pressure from their peers. So this is a real phenomenon. But then also notice that this doesn't just suppress critical inquiry, and I think to say that it does gives it too much credit. It oppresses the appearance of critical inquiry, because even within these social peer groups, which many of us are evidence of, someone's still thinking critically, even if they're not saying it. Someone's still participating, and even though they're no longer attached to it, and they're thinking about it critically, but the social cohesion is so powerful that they just don't have the freedom to speak up about it at all, and yet they still want to identify with the group. And this was for me like when people who are of the pride community would, you know, finally discover like, okay, this is who I am, when they'd still want to be a part of churches that they knew were anti-pride. Because I'd always be wondering, like, okay, well, if I'm gay and this church believes that gay people are going to hell, Why the fuck would I want to keep going to this church? But that's how powerful social cohesion is, because nobody really attends, not, or I don't want to say nobody, but most people don't attend churches because of the beliefs. That's something we've moved away from as a society. You remember churches used to have their creeds and their doctrines like posted in the foyer, in the narthex or whatever else, so everybody can see, because that was the thing they were the most proud of. But by far and large, the church that has remained relevant, in any type of media space, are the churches that no longer have those creeds. They're not even on their website anymore. It's more posters of what's coming up next. It's like giant entertainment complexes, and which is really an awesome thing, from the community aspect. It's giant community centers. It's the bullshit that's the problem. Um, so yeah, and in these groups, skepticism or deviation from the accepted belief can lead to ostracism, further reinforcing a tendency to conform. This social pressure leads individuals to remain within belief systems that might not withstand critical scrutiny if evaluated independently. Shermer highlights how communities like UFO believers, flat earthers, and creationists thrive by reinforcing each other's ideas, forming echo chambers where outside perspectives are disregarded. And I love the point that he highlights, that in these groups, skepticism or deviation from the accepted belief can lead to ostracism. But I think the misunderstanding of that ostracism that we often have is that we think it's going to be the highly religious who are going to be the ones who do the ostracizing. And this is why I harped on the social cohesion aspect so much. This is definitely in group, out group stuff. So, for example, my mother was never a highly religious person. She was a drug addict for most of my life. She didn't stop being an active addict until I was over 21 years old, and I was married and had my first child. She several times I would come home from school, and she would have packed up her bags and moved and left me as an elementary child. You know, this was who my mother was. Even after she got delivered from drugs, she still didn't get her act together. She was a member of my church, literally spread rumors about me while being a member of my church. She's the only person I've ever had to ban from my church because she was such a toxic person who couldn't deal with her own demons. Um, and I mean, just laundry list of fuckery that this woman has put me through as a parent. And throughout the whole way, I've always loved her. I've appreciated her. I've celebrated her publicly and privately. I bought her gifts on Mother's Day, even though she had never actually been a mother, which I have some harsh things to say about families. But when she found out I didn't believe in God, she felt that was enough to say, I'm done with him. You know, that's the ostracism. Now, thankfully, she was such a horrible mother that it's going to hurt her more than it could actually hurt me. I can't miss something that I never had. And I've tried to create opportunity for her to make amends. But even though she's not a highly religious person, she loves the excuse that Jesus has forgiven me. So I don't have to make amends for any of the bullshit that I put my children through. And just to be clear here, it's not really amends that I try to highlight for people. It's a relationship you never built. You can't expect to have a relationship that you never built. Your children don't owe you what they never had. Just throwing that out there. All right. So, this section emphasizes how deeply social dynamics influence belief systems and how challenging it can be for individuals to break away from their pseudoscientific beliefs when social reinforcement is at play. Shermer encourages fostering environments that promote open inquiry and critical thinking as opposed to conformity driven belief systems. Before hitting his next point, I want to highlight one point that he hasn't hit that I don't think anybody has hit. I think one of the biggest reasons that people believe weird things is because it excuses them from their own bad behavior. And honestly, that's one of the biggest ones. That's one of the ones I like. It was obvious to me the year that I deconverted that no, there are plenty of people that if they do detach from these beliefs, then they're going to have to admit that all the foul shit they did that Jesus told them to do, that it really wasn't Jesus telling them to do the foul shit, that they were just foul people. And that's really the demon that people don't want to wrestle with. That's why some people stay in some of this stupid shit, because they don't want to have to admit how fucking wrong they've been. Ego. That's what it is. But like when you come from a belief system that believes there is a perfection, you're always going to be judging yourself in light of that, which is why it's always going to be difficult for you to wrestle with when you've gotten shit wrong. See, I don't have that perfection issue, so I'm never surprised when I've gotten something wrong. And so that no longer holds me back. All right, let's keep rocking and rolling. The book also analyzes how cultural, religious, and historical contexts contribute to these belief systems, examining phenomena like witch hunts, UFO sightings, and Holocaust denial. He demonstrates how cultural movements, religious dogma, and societal fears have shaped belief systems throughout history. For instance, he examines witch hunts as a cultural response to fear and social instability, where irrational beliefs in witchcraft led to the persecution of innocent people. Similarly, Shermer delves into modern phenomena like UFO sightings and Holocaust denial, showing how specific historical and cultural conditions such as Cold War paranoia or anti-Semitism create fertile ground for these fringe beliefs to thrive. Now, I'm going to highlight this one because this isn't something that gets talked about a lot, and I feel like I do need to bring some attention to it. Um, Anti-Semitism gets protection from the secular community and the religious community in ways that anti-racism just simply doesn't. And that actually doesn't make any sense because they should be the same thing. You know? So just there's never a short supply of atheists speaking on the need to protect um, our Jewish folks, our Jewish brothers and sisters. But as far as I've seen, as far as community, I've not seen that same need to protect the Black community, African American communities, which, by the way, yes, we had a Holocaust too. And that's why, honestly, every time I read Holocaust denial, I cringe because I have to recognize that that's hard for my Jewish brothers and sisters, that people are absolutely ignoring that this event in history had such an impact on them, that people, no. Like people have rallied around our Jewish brothers and sisters in such a way that we gave them a whole fucking country. But when Black people mention our Holocaust, our Ma'afa, it's always treated, even though the body count is disproportionately greater, even though the time period is disproportionately greater, even though the loss of economy is disproportionately greater, we're always silenced by secular community and religious community alike. And so that's why just every time, and again, I'm not a Holocaust denier. The loss of life is tragic every time. I just wish we could recognize that when it's Black life too. I will, and I don't need your permission to. But you have no idea how many times when I've been talking about African American slavery and the colonization of Africa, where I've had somebody tell me, well, at least y'all didn't have a Holocaust. The absolute disgust that I experience when someone says some bullshit to me like that. You know? And the sad thing is, even though ours had much more loss of life over a longer period of time, you don't traditionally see us as a people trying to attack Jewish folks in their past history. Now there are some fringe folk who've done it. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but by far and large, that's never been our battle. So I don't like that. I don't like that people treat us that like we don't have a right to be upset about what the fuck happened to us, because we do. We do. And honestly, it's the ones who were more upset about it who were the most informed. You know, I'll just say Malcolm knew a whole lot more than Martin did, and we won't give him that credit. But that's also why Malcolm was able to have much, I hate to say it, Malcolm was able to have much more intelligent conversations than Martin was. That's just my personal opinion, obviously, which it could only be my personal opinion because it's a complete subjective experience, right? All right, so sorry to take y'all down that part. But Shermer points out that many pseudoscientific and supernatural beliefs stems from larger cultural narratives that offer explanations for social anxieties or fill gaps in understandings. Witch hunts, for example, were not just about superstition, but about consolidating power and controlling social norms in a time of uncertainty. Um, Likewise, UFO sightings became popular during the Cold War as fears of technological warfare and foreign threats escalated. Which, to me, that's correlation, not causation. So I wouldn't have used that one because it's not even a good correlation. Cold War, fears of technological warfare, UFO sightings. I see how those are related. If I'm afraid of technological warfare and foreign threats, why would I think it's an alien? You know? Okay. That's just me. But by placing these beliefs within their historical and cultural frameworks, Shermer demonstrates how they become normalized within specific societies, even when evidence directly contradicts them. Understanding this contextual backdrop, according to Shermer, is crucial to combating these beliefs as it reveals how social forces shape irrational thinking. Um, this awareness enables individuals to critically engage with contemporary movements that might otherwise exploit similar fears or cultural conditions, which I can definitely get that, and I see that one there. That one makes sense. The only thing I would diverge from is, and I know we say it because it's easier to say that, yes, these things offer explanations, but they don't actually offer explanations. They offer placeholders. You know, the thing is, like the the when it comes to Christianity, the normal, the average Christian isn't going to say they have answers to these questions. That's not what God is for them. God isn't the answer to all of their questions. God is the promise that these questions will be answered at a later date. God is the promise that somebody has the answers. You just don't, you know? So it's not explanations. And the reason I say that is the same reason I say that it's not control and that it's not comfort, right? That's the propaganda that's been used, So people are like, well, how else do you think it rained? Yeah, you thinking that the rain is God tears is God's tears is not actual an explanation. You know, that's a shortcut that you were willing to accept, and we can talk about all the reasons why. Which Shermer does do a good job of highlighting the different nuances that impact why we believe, how we believe, especially when it comes to the weird things. I just hope I've been able to add a little more insight into the subtle nuances of these things, because I think again, for the non-religious, it's outside looking in, and so you're taking the religious folks' words for their experiences, which don't do that. You know, when it if they're talking about something they're qualified to talk about, sure. Nobody who is religious, nobody who is actively religious, is qualified to talk about religion. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. Nobody who is actively religious is qualified to speak about religion. All right. And I'll probably add some caveats to that later on. Like, no one's who's actively superstitiously religious, because there are some humanists who identify as religious. So, I'll give you that. But Shermer provides tools for critical thinking and scientific skepticism, illustrating how scientific methods can help debunk false beliefs, from astrology to paranormal claims. Which, yes, I agree with in part. But I think this has been the flaw in the secular community. It's not beliefs you're having to combat, because most of these people don't have these beliefs. Even when they're arguing for these beliefs, they're not arguing for the beliefs. They're arguing for the authenticity of their culture. They're arguing for the authenticity of their family. If I separate from this belief, I have to accept that somebody lied to me, or that somebody gave me the wrong information, or that somebody who I highly praised and appreciated wasn't qualified to give me information. And those are things that are very hard for people to wrestle with. So while yes, I do know that debunking false beliefs is fun, it's entertaining, and it's gonna help some, I don't think it's where the bulk of our time should be. If you're really concerned about debunking false beliefs, which I don't even think that should be the focus, right? The focus isn't debunking false beliefs. The focus really should be getting people into more productive living, you know, because we're sharing this planet together, and we're whatever future is ahead of us, we have to deal with it together. So we need as many people who are not playing with themselves and their imaginary friends as possible, you know. But we also need to recognize that it has been our absence of action, you know, and I'm new to the party, but it's been our absence of action that has absolutely led to the spread of this. It has been our like absolute and like just this weird focus of always letting people know we're not a community. We are not a community. The only thing we have in common is we don't believe in a God. Okay, you can change that though, dumbass. We can be a community. So, like, why would we keep raising the flag that the one thing that the other people are looking for is going to be the one thing we're going to be incredibly resistant to doing? That makes no sense. And at that moment, that means you have become just as religious as the religious. Because at that moment, your ideology isn't based in logic. It's based in superstition and an unsubstantiated fear. Now, I just don't want to look like that other group. I've never liked working with people like that, period. I've been a performer and artist like majority of my life. And anytime I'm working with a group of people and their number one thing is, I just don't want to look like this, then I already know you don't know what the fuck your goal is here. And I don't like working with people like that, which is why I don't mind calling that shit out. All right, but yeah, critical thinking. I love the science shows. I love the philosophy talks. I love showing people how, you know, I love the shows that show us how the science work. But I need us to understand it wasn't reason that got people into these beliefs. It was community. So yes, let's do those things, but let's actually build community around those things, because that's what's going to win the people. And I promise you, the more the secular community actually gets involved with building community, the more people you're going to see come out of the closet and come out of the woodworks. Because many of them, like, and this is no past for pastors, this is no secret. The majority of our congregations are already adopting and living a secular worldview. They only come to church because they have no other options for these sociological needs. Get it? Got it? Good. All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps up. I should do a summary here. Ultimately, the book is an argument for applying reason and scientific thinking and understanding the world, while also exploring the deeply human need for meaning that drives belief in the inexplicable. It highlights the importance of critical inquiry and the dangers of accepting ideas without evidence. And that's definitely something that I do try to spend quite a bit of time on this channel doing, is really highlighting the harms of these ideas, highlighting the harms of these beliefs, how they harm us as individuals and how they cause harm to groups as well. But then also one of my biggest goals of calling out this harm is also to say this, it's not just harming us. That means it's slowing us down, you know. And I know everybody doesn't want to be hyper productive, but I am. And so like, anybody who I can convince to get out of the slow lane and get into the fast lane, I'm going to do it. And I know some people are enjoying the slow lane and it's not even superstitious for them. It's just that life is hard and I'm just trying to enjoy day by day. And if that's fine, fine. But I know my mission is to help get as many people involved with moving us forward, you know, as quick as we can. We've been late to the party as a species. I don't think we quite understand the significance of that. And so there's a lot of work to do. I don't want people, I'm not looking for critical thinkers just for the sake of saying, yes, I delivered everybody from that foolish religion. Ha 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 ha. No, no. It's so that we can have more people at the table, more people helping us solve the problems. You know, that's the only way things change. when larger groups of people are aware enough of the issues and engaging with the reality of the issues to actually be able to help contribute and to cooperate and to collaborate around the solutions. All right, that's all I have for you today. Thank y'all for hanging out with me. I've got to get back to work. Yeah. So don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell, consider connecting, supporting, or joining this content community or channel in any way that makes sense to you. And of course, check out the merch because, as I've said, it's some of the dopest in the game. And if you haven't got my book, Christ Held Up, yet, what are you waiting on? It's a quick read. And if you're looking to have some good faith conversations with some believers who mean something to you, this is a great tool to actually navigate those conversations. All right, that's all I have. Thank y'all. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and if you can, stay beautiful. I'll holla.